All right, this is the American Demon Comics and Dismay Comics podcast. This is Austin Light. I'm the webtoon creator of Envy, which is about to all be altered there. And this is Brandon Ingram with Dismay Comics.
Thank you.
How you
Thank
doing,
you.
Brandon?
Doing pretty good. I'm actually glad we're recording in the morning.
Yeah.
I got my coffee. It got me motivated to getting up and doing stuff instead of staying in bed working on stuff.
Yeah, I like the morning. I like the morning a little better because I like to have caffeine, and it gets my brain flowing a little bit better.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing that too close to bedtime, it's gonna be a hard night. So
Yeah. I get
also,
that.
my brain is thinking a little more clearly in the morning rather than when it's done all its thinking already throughout the day, and it doesn't want to think anymore at night.
That makes sense.
So let's get into what we're looking at right now. Your Kickstarter has been a huge success. I've been seeing a continuous flow of Dismay updates on Facebook and on Instagram, story after story after story, ad after ad, and it's done really well. So, tell me how you're feeling about that Kickstarter and getting all these stretch goals met.
It's going really good. In all honesty, it's doing better than what I thought it would do. Like the very first week of the Kickstarter, I knew we would easily hit the funding goal of 1,000. I was like 50-50 on if we would hit 2,000 by the end. I assumed we probably would, but yeah, like where it is now, where we're almost at like the last stretch goal of 2,500. Like I mean, like I knew it was a possibility, but at the very beginning of the Kickstarter, I didn't know we would actually come close to it, which is awesome. Yeah, it's really good to see how it's doing. The thing that's just weird is like, I think it's just because like a lot of life stuff. This is like the Kickstarter that has been like the most time I've most time I put into it, or like most uh, mental capacity, essentially like the most effort I've put into something like a Kickstarter, to where like we're almost at the end. And I am happy the Kickstarter did well, but I am ultimately like, can't wait for the Kickstarter to be over. Because it's just like it's like a weight off your chest. Like you don't have to do the marketing as hard anymore. Like I'm still going to do like podcasts here and there. I'd like the podcast and the YouTube stuff, but like the marketing aspect can just be so exhausting. Like just sometimes, this isn't all the time, but sometimes you're just screaming into a void, hoping there's that one person that hears you. But it's,
well, it seems like a lot of people heard you.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's like, I am happy with what it is, but it ultimately results to like screaming into thousands of voids, and it just so happens that there's a few people in some of them. But yeah, that ultimately is just the challenge, because I won't say it's like awful. It ultimately is the challenge for like us indie creators, is just like spreading the word out. Like we as creators, because that's to some degree, as a writer or an artist, you have to have like at least a little bit of an ego. If like you're like, I'm going to put this out for the world, look at my stuff. There's got to be at least a little bit of an ego there.
Or at least you have to kind of manifest one if you don't really have it.
Exactly. So like it's one of those things where it's we believe in ourselves. And that's ultimately the number one thing. You need to believe in yourself and have like the confidence in what you're doing. But now we're just trying to show everyone else like, hey, like, this is that thing I believe in.
Look
Check
at
it
it.
out. Yeah, exactly.
Look at it. I want you to look at it. Well, it's really good. It was really worth it. I don't know. I know I got my digital copy of the Tales from Town City. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the
Thank
uh the first story of Hypno Ray. He was
Oh, yeah.
I the expression that the artist put into it, and the whole style really fit, I think, that story, and the expressions that was in his face, and the effects in the background. I think it all worked really well
Oh,
for
yeah.
that humor that you wrote
Juan
in there.
Romero, he was the artist of it. And like, I was actually a fan of his before I worked with him. Like, there was a book he had done that I really liked. And I basically like reached out to him about like that last story, the Fierce Pets one, like the super animals. I reached out to him about that because the book I had read of his before was essentially like it was his portfolio for that story, because that story that he had done was basically like killer sloths, and it was like vicious and violent, but it was hilarious. And so it was like, oh, like I've seen him do animals violently killing humans, like that's essentially this super animal story. um and then like, yeah, I looked back at like some of his old stuff in his like actual portfolio, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, he can actually, like, not it wasn't never doubting him, but I just like had realized like he can do strictly conversational humor, because that's literally that first story, the two homeless villains, is like not a lot of action is happening. It ultimately is like a couple people having a dialogue. It's essentially like a web skit, like
Yeah.
that's essentially that one. But I saw he was able to do emotions very well, like capture facial emotions very well, and like you said, like those bright or standout backgrounds that happen whenever a character freaks out or whatever. Yeah, so I hired him for both of them, but yeah, he did a really good job. I want to
Just
work with him again one day.
the blank face on the cashier. It's just like, no, these are
aren't
expired. Like, just it hit really well.
Thank you.
So,
which I do want to mention something. I did read all of Envy.
okay. Well,
I did read all of it.
I've anticipated that you might have, and
Gotcha.
I was kind of gonna do half with all your updates and asking you questions that I have for you, and then I was gonna update where I'm at, and then you can butt in where you want to on that.
Sounds good.
Let's see. So your Kickstarter was a huge success, and you've done several over 2 years.
Yeah, I started doing them. By this point, it's almost 3 years. Like October 20th would make 3 years. I mentioned that because my very first Kickstarter failed, like unsuccessful funding. Because at that time I literally just didn't know what it took to run a Kickstarter. Like, it was just like, I had a good page. The page is good. I believed in my comic. The issue was I didn't know anything about marketing an indie comic. Even to the point where, like, so one thing, I didn't really reach out to any YouTube stuff or podcast or review sites or anything like that. As well as, this was a huge shot in the foot for that one, I didn't like reach out to family and friends till like a week into the Kickstarter. Like while the Kickstarter was going is when I reached out to them.
Yeah.
For anyone listening that like wants to know about like Kickstarters or crowdfunding or anything like that, let family and friends know a month before it happens, a week
Hmm.
before it happens, the day before it happens, the day it happens, and then like sometime during the last week of the Kickstarter. So like
Hmm.
there needs to be with family and friends like 4 to 5 updates, and you can do more. It all depends on how much you want to pester them. But I like to pester them here and there. Uh, so yeah, I didn't realize that with that first Kickstarter, and I learned a lot from that. It was unsuccessful. It was for Dismay Avenue #1, like the first issue of my anthology
Hmm.
series or horror anthology series. It was ultimately one of those things I just picked myself back up because it was like it did suck. It was like a huge gut punch, but it was one of those things where like I did realize a lot of it was my fault in not
Hmm.
knowing how to run a Kickstarter. Uh, so I just
Okay.
picked
Well,
myself back up. I had the comics done, so it was like I'm just going to do another Kickstarter, and I learned from all the mistakes I did and apply that to the
well,
next one.
give us a few, like another example or two of mistakes that you had to face or obstacles you faced during that first Kickstarter, and what changed into the second one.
Yeah, the first one, like I had mentioned, failing to reach out to family and friends enough as well as before the Kickstarter, uh, not reaching out to like any review sites or YouTube stuff or any of that stuff. Those were like the two biggest mistakes from that one, just like
So,
in terms
like,
of a marketing thing.
expand on review sites.
Yeah. So there's different review sites, like websites. I submit to some now. It's ultimately a good thing to do like your first or second or even third comic to submit to review sites because one, you can use quotes from that in your
Mm,
Kickstarter or whatever it may be, whatever marketing thing you can do, you can use quotes from that. That was ultimately the main reason I did it. Because people do view the review sites, but not a ton. It ultimately is to get like someone somewhat professional to read it,
yeah.
to review it, possibly critique it so you can learn from it, um, and use those quotes. Because I did that with Gallows Man #1. I sent it to review sites and stuff, got a lot of feedback, got like really great quotes, and plugged those into the Gallows Man #2 Kickstarter.
What are
Because,
some? Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say with Gallows Man #1, like I didn't. I didn't have any reviews or quotes for Gallows Man #1.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so whenever I did the Kickstarter campaign, the plus side with Gallows Man is it's a comedy. It's like an absurd comedy. So whenever I did the Kickstarter campaign, I just made up funny quotes essentially, and like I even put it on the back of Gallows Man #1. Like one of the quotes was, "Well, I can say it is a comic book," and then quoted by Grant Morrison, but I put in parentheses, not that one. Uh, and then another one was, boy, do I feel sorry for whoever had to raise the so called writer, and quoted by the writer's mom, parentheses, that one. So, like, even though I didn't have quotes, getting creative with it, because it is a comedy book, like, that helped as well.
Gotcha. I was going to ask, what are some examples of review sites? If somebody was like watching and wanting to learn where they might want to go to get a review or two, what are
I,
good
I can
websites?
I can say at least a couple off the top of my head. If anyone's interested, they can DM me on Facebook or Instagram, and I can send you more, like essentially kind of like a little list. But one I'd recommend is Pipe Dream Comics. They're based out of the UK, but they do pretty good reviews. Oh, what are some more? And they do like indie comic
Hmm.
reviews like a lot. So, and that's a big thing. Like understand, whoever's listening, understand that like we are indie comics. Like it's likely that CBR, like comic book, uh, basically the comic book website, like it's likely they won't pick up your book and review it because they're reviewing the Marvel DC stuff and like Boom Studios, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there are big websites for indie stuff. So the one I just mentioned, I'm trying to think some more. A place to hang your cape. I believe that's another. A place to hang your cape. Because I actually used one of their quotes. I think I used Pipe Dream Comics as well. I'm trying to remember. That there's at least two though, but again, people can DM me. There's a few more that I have written down. But I would also say like reach out to YouTubers, or this is a big thing that I started doing at the end of 2022. Reach out to TikTokers as well. Like I think that's something a lot of us indie people, especially as people are getting older, like the older indie people, they're not utilizing TikTok, but they need to, because I realized with my last campaign, the Dismay Avenue 1 and 2 campaign, like that was my first time doing TikTok, like marketing on TikTok, as well as reaching out to TikTokers to review the book. And I literally saw like at least a few, it could have been more because I couldn't see all the analytics, but at least a few people from TikTok came over and backed that Kickstarter. So there are the review sites, but also reach out to YouTubers that review indie comics, reach out to TikTokers that review indie comics, as well as depends on the genre of your book. Sometimes they don't even have to be like a comic channel. Like if it's Dismay Avenue, the one from 2022, that was actually a good example because it's horror. I reached out to a decent bit of like horror channels. Like they did horror movies and all that stuff. Didn't really read comics. But they really dug the comics to where like they either had me on their show or they reviewed the comic. So depending on your genre, also branch out from just indie comic channel or comic channel. Reach out to those genre channels.
Oh yeah, that's where when we met at that paranormal convention, people were eating it up because we were the only comics there. They liked that genre. So I'm wanting to get a version or a copy of The Gallows Man. Do you mail them out? Is it available online somewhere? How do we get more of what you're making?
So this might be me shooting myself in the foot, but I like to do this. I don't have like an online site where people can buy the comic after Kickstarter or whatever. Like I only have comics available. Yeah, I mean like it'll probably be like probably a few years from now. Like whenever Gallows Man, that miniseries is done or something, I might like put it up on something. But currently, like for a good while, the only way to get the comics is through like Kickstarters. Like because I kind of like the Kickstarter to feel like an event. Like if someone like missed out on the last Kickstarter and they go to this one, it's like, ooh, like I can pick up his new book. And then on like add-on sections or like other tiers, it's like, oh, I can also check out like his other stuff. Like I can get Dismay Avenue, or I can get Gallows Man, or this or that. I kind of like that like that rollout type like pop-up market thing. Essentially, like it's like you got a month to get in, and then we're packing up the bag, and we'll be back in a few months or half a year or whatever, and we're here again. Like that is pretty much the only way to get it online. If people live in the very southeast, like the Pensacola, Florida region, I'm going to be doing like conventions around that area. But other than that, pretty much the only way is through Kickstarter. And there's pros and cons to that, but I do like it to where like people get in on the ground floor, and not saying it's like a exclusivity thing, but
Hmm.
more just like, oh, like it's an event rather than just like it is another Kickstarter.
Right. Um, so let me think. I was going to go ahead and ask, uh, how does Kickstarter fulfill these things? How do you order? So like you told me in the past you use Comic Wellspring to get your comics. Do you order a batch of the comics to you and plan to have stretch goal merchandise or shirts and that kind of thing, and then start the Kickstarter, and then as people back it, you start preparing boxes or something, or does Kickstarter kind of provide a like system of print on demand or anything for certain items? Like, how does all that work?
Ultimately, Kickstarter does nothing. Kickstarter is just the platform that you
Okay.
can put your thing on, and it's a notable name, so it's like people will go to it and be able to back it, but you have to do all the marketing for it. Kickstarter doesn't do much marketing for you. Yeah, they don't do any of the print on demand stuff.
Hmm.
You basically you use their platform because it's notable and people know about it, and then they charge you 10% at the very end. But so yeah, Kickstarter does nothing. So yeah, like what I usually do, I have the book completely done in terms of like the PDF is completely done. The files are ready to be sent to the printer. I've already got like proofs or at least digital proofs of stickers or T-shirts
Hmm.
or any of that stuff before the Kickstarter. That way, once the Kickstarter launches, once it's done, as soon as it's done, specifically 2 weeks after it's done, because that's the thing about Kickstarter is so it's October 4th right now. October 5th, the Kickstarter ends. Most of the time, at least for me, you won't get the funds from the Kickstarter till 2 weeks after it's done.
Hmm.
So I won't get the funds October 5th. It'll be like October 19th or something is when I'll get those funds. But I'll likely order the stuff before that because I never have an issue with Kickstarter sending me the funds. Um, but yeah, so once I get the funds, I then put in the order through Comics Wellspring for the comics. And Comics Wellspring does a decent bit more than just comics. Like when they were starting out, that's what's so weird is like I used them almost 3 years ago and they were big, but like they weren't like the biggest indie comic printing name at the time.
Yeah.
Within 3 years, they've boomed to where like they're the go-to indie printer. It's so weird. But anyway, they have more than just like printing your comic. You can print bookmarks with them. You can print for those that do conventions and stuff. You can print your banners and your. They also have the retractable banners and stuff with them. That's actually how I printed my banners was with them because it turned out good as well as it was a little bit cheaper than standard website that would sell banners. Um, Let me think. What else? There's so much stuff. Coasters. They also do stickers. I'm pretty sure, but I don't use them for stickers. Um, but yeah, just all kinds of stuff. So yeah, they cover the comics, bookmarks, stuff like that. I'll usually print that with them, and then like
So,
banners or whatever. But then there's also like with T-shirts, I'll use uh, uh, like a T-shirt website. Like I've used Custom Ink in the past. Custom Ink is good. The issue is like there's not much discounts when you get a quantity.
yeah.
Like if you get
Yeah.
25 or 30 or 40 or whatever, like they don't go down much in price when you get a quantity.
I use them for
Whereas
mine.
yeah. Whereas I found a new website, and it's big. It's not like it's like some underground website. It was called Broken Arrowware, where they have one a lot more like selection of t-shirts in terms of colors and stuff like that. And I'm using them for this one, the Tales from Town City one. And I'm going to print probably 25 shirts, like with these t-shirts. Like I want to have some for conventions, but I ultimately don't want to have like a bunch saved up over 2 or 3 years, because each Kickstarter from now on is going to have like a t-shirt rollout with it, like an exclusive t-shirt, to where like, okay, that one's gone, but hey, like we got a new one. It's not really I'm going to like reprint them or anything. Maybe in the future, but that's not the plan. But yeah, with them, I'm probably going to print 25, and at 25, I think it's $14 or $15 a piece. But I should also mention, with that, the t-shirts for Tales from Town City, the Fierce Pets one, there's so many colors with that. That kind of sucks for me. There's a ton of colors with it, and the more colors you have with the t-shirt design, the more pricey it'll be.
Yeah.
Like if I were to print the Dismay Avenue shirt where it's just black and white, I printed that with custom ink last time. If I were to print that with Broken Arrow, I could probably, for 25 shirts, probably get that for like probably less than $10 a shirt. Maybe even cheaper. I wish I had known that like a year ago. I would have went with Broken Arrow instead of custom ink, because when I did custom ink, I think it was like $12 a shirt for the Dismay Avenue ones. And it's just black and white. But yeah,
Well,
you live and you learn.
Mine was it's about 17 a shirt. And I didn't like that very much, but so I worked at this Halloween store, and they had shirts there. And I looked at the tag because I really enjoyed how comfortable that shirt was. And it was like a Canva something
it's like
branded,
like Canva, not tri-blend, but like I know the shirt you're talking about, because that's one of the popular ones.
And I got just a black and white print on the front, and I got my logos on the back, and it was $17 a shirt, and that's not that's not great.
What's wild is like how, like, ultimately, because yours was black and white, right? It was just black and white. What's wild is that slight price jump of simply putting, like, how big's the logo on the back? Not that big, or
very small, about fit in a box.
So just putting the logo on the back, like having anything on the back, it could be the size of a quarter, essentially. Putting anything on the back with custom ink, like, it's like a $2 to $4 price jump. It's so dumb. I understand, but kind of don't understand, because like sure, like the you got to flip the shirt over and then like print it, but it's also like it's using barely any like printing ink, like, because it's such a small thing. But yeah, like custom ink does do good quality. I'm just not a fan of the prices.
Yeah, that's the another thing that I loved the quality. I love wearing my t-shirt. I've had some t-shirts in the past printed from like Teespring, and I don't wear them because they're just not comfortable. So that was a priority when I had these made. And maybe it's just a fact of life that prices have gone up so much that you got to sell them for a lot more than what you want to sell them for.
That's true. Yeah.
But so that's all I wanted to cover here with you. Do you have any additional thoughts on Kickstarter, on Gallows Man, the future of what you're thinking about?
I'd first say, like, anyone that is doing crowdfunding or making a comic, whatever, like stick to it. Like if you really want to do it, if you feel a drive or a passion of somewhat, stick to it. There will be those lows, but there will be highs with it. I've experienced some lows. I know in the future I'll experience more lows. Um, but there are highs with it. Like that's ultimately what keeps you going and doing the stuff. But a major thing is to like ultimately just like believe in yourself in terms of your creation, um, as well as like whenever the indie people do send like comics out to review sites or do the YouTube shows or whatever, uh, try to stay humble. But I will say with those YouTube shows and the podcast and stuff, that does help like keep you going because
Mm-hmm.
you are getting that immediate feedback of your comic or whatever it may be. Um,
And
so
this is coming from a man. This is coming from a man that had a failed Kickstarter
yeah,
to 2 years later having a very extremely doubled, like I think it's doubled,
yeah, yeah,
Kickstarter.
yeah.
So
This is my fourth successful Kickstarter. I've ran 5 Kickstarters. First one was unsuccessful. This is my fourth successful Kickstarter. I'm just going to keep going. Like that's also the thing is after that unsuccessful one, when I had Gallows Man #1, that was like my first successful Kickstarter. Um, there's still going to be mistakes that you make, like with anything. Like there will be mistakes. You learned from a decent bit of the mistakes from the past, but now you apply those. There's still going to be mistakes that happen. Just keep going. When you get to the next Kickstarter, learn from those mistakes. There's going to be mistakes you make in that one. You're going to just keep learning from those mistakes, but it's just going to build you up as a creator as well as a marketer. Like here's the thing, I'm not an expert marketer by no means. I'd say that's probably the weakest aspect for me as an indie comic creator is marketing, because a lot of
mhm.
times it seems like you're throwing darts at the wall and hoping one sticks essentially. Um,
I wanted I wanted to ask you, while I'm thinking about it, that have did you boost any of these uh, Instagram or Facebook posts, or are you just relying on the organic reach of it?
so usually I started doing this either with Gallows Man 1 or Gallows Man 2. I'll usually do Facebook or meta ads because I do
Hmm.
Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. Um, I'll usually do those. I've cut back on how much I'll spend on ads for those because I don't really know how
How?
much it
Yeah.
helps or not. I see people view it. I can see people view it. I see how many people click it, but in terms of how many people back the Kickstarter from that, I don't entirely know. Um, so I've cut back on that some. Like usually what I'll do is whether it's Facebook or TikTok, I'll run an ad like the first 5 days of a Kickstarter. Then I'll run an ad the last 2 to 3 days of a Kickstarter. That's usually what I do. Because right now there's a Facebook ad, and I also have 3 different TikTok videos that I promoted that are like running and getting more views. That one is kind of like, yes, I realize this is just what I've seen. TikTok advertisement, I think there's a better turnout
Hmm.
in terms of possible backing and stuff. That's just what I've seen the past year. Um, to where I spent this is a really low number. I spent $12 on Facebook ads these last 2 days, $6
Hmm.
per day. It was one ad, and it's going out. TikTok, I have 3 different videos. They ultimately are ads, but it's 3 different videos that each one has $10 on. Um, that is ultimately like I know TikTok's a better way to get it out, but also I want to test the waters. Like doing the 3 videos, I just want to see which one works better so that I
Yeah.
can then apply that to the next Kickstarter, being like, okay, this type of video works better
Hmm.
or whatever it may be.
And that's a small investment.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a good way to go about it. Um, because if you just throw $50 or $100 into making a big ad. There's just no way of telling if you're going to make that
Yeah.
money back.
You have no idea, especially if it's like your first ad, whether it's your first Facebook ad or first TikTok ad, like you have no idea what works and what doesn't. So like it's good to start low and possibly try out more than one, because that's another thing with the ads is like, yes, the ad itself, the image, the words, all that stuff, that's part of it. You could do the same exact thing, but then change the audience it goes to and see which works better, because that's usually a thing with Facebook or TikTok. You can choose very broad things with the audience, but see what works better. Because I'll say I've made a few mistakes this Kickstarter. One mistake that I made really recently is I found out through TikTok that through seeing one of the ads that played at the beginning of the campaign, you can look at the age demographics, like this percent of this age, this percent, that sort of thing. I looked at the first ad I did for this Kickstarter back like September 5th or 6th. I think it was like 90% or 95% of the ad was shown to 13 to 17-year-olds. And I was like, that kind of sucks. Like, hey, like, I'm glad they got a laugh, but like at the end of the day, they don't have a credit card or money.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, that was kind of a waste, because 95% of the people it was shown to were middle schoolers and high schoolers. To where I learned from that mistake, and the ads that are playing now, I made sure to click 18 to 55, essentially. Like ultimately, like glad children got like a good laugh, because they were funny ads. But at the end of the day, you are paying for that marketing. And most of the time, if you're running a Kickstarter, you're paying for the marketing. You're hoping to get a backer or two or a few backers from that. And if you're just playing for middle schoolers and high schoolers, you're going to get enjoyment from them. But at the end of the day, they don't have money, so they can't back your thing.
Which is that's a good takeaway, because for the most part, it's true. Now, I like to have little tiny incentives, so you have like a $1 like backing. So in case somebody's really hard on times, they can still probably find $1
Oh
to
yeah,
do something.
and that's what I say with like whenever I'm on like YouTube shows or anything, like I'll mention like there's reward tiers from $1 to $75. There's a reward tier for any budget, because I've been on high times, I've been on low times financially.
Yeah.
So I completely get it. So yeah, there's like a $1 tier where like, hey, it's not just like I just gave $1. You get a social media thank you through that. So like even at $1, you get some. You can read the comic digitally for $5, like stuff like that. But as well as like if someone can't swing like a pledge, like sharing it always helps, because that's ultimately a thing that we're trying to do with our marketing and reaching out to YouTubers and podcasts. Is we're just trying to spread the word. So if someone can't pledge, like simply them sharing it out helps as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to update my situation. I went to a con in mid-September, and as far as the con itself goes, the turnout wasn't that great, but it was a first annual, and we're kind of thinking that the location might not have been the best, and the promotion definitely wasn't there. They could have promoted it a lot earlier for a lot longer. But for the traffic that we had, we did pretty good. And a lot of people were asking number one, a lot of people were asking, like, they would come up to my little zine and pull it up and be like, "Is this your comic? Can I look through it? Is this your comic? Is this your comic?" And I'll be like, "No, that's associated with the characters in the comics, like little background information, stuff like that." And then I would have to be like, to go read the comic, I have a link here. You can look on the banner or take the link from my business card, and then on the landing page is a link to the webtoon. And I think that's just the number two part. That's a lot of hurdles for people to just do on the spot. They're not really willing to do that, even though I wanted it to be free on this easy to use platform. Like, since Webtoon did all that for me, I don't have to code anything in order to display it. I just have the images. I post the images in the correct order, and then then it's published.
Yeah, it takes no time for them to do it. The issue with, I guess, just humans is if there's one or two extra steps to something, we're like, especially if it's like an impulse thing, because
Yeah.
that's a big thing. If you're at a convention, especially us indie guys, like if we're at a convention, people are checking our stuff out or buying our stuff on impulse because it's the first time they're seeing it. And there will be people that like think about it or like scan it or take a picture
Yeah.
of it and then we'll go to it. But a major thing, we're playing to the impulse customer essentially.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also noticed if I'm promoting my webtoon and I have people that enjoy webtoon come up and they start looking into they'll tell me, "Oh, I love webtoons. I love webtoons." And they start looking into it and they leave. A lot of those people are actually into the romance side of webtoon, and they see webtoon and they'll look at it, but if it's still not their genre, they're not gonna stick to it. And on top of
It's
that,
like I was going to say real quick. It's like saying like, "Hey, are you into comics? Check out my comic." Because that's the thing.
yeah,
Like with webtoon, it's a media. It's not a genre.
mm-hmm,
Like that's a big thing. Is like you can be into comics or into webtoon, but that's not the type of webtoon or that's not the type of comic I read or this person
right,
reads. Like, yeah, these are medias rather than like actual genres.
mm-hmm. And that was, I think that was also a form of filtering people. And if you didn't know, a lot of people that do it, to read my webtoon, they would download webtoon, and webtoon is primarily promoting those romance type things. You just get slapped in the face with romance, anime style, or these or comedy. Romance comedies are a huge hit there. So somebody that wants to read my comic they'll open it and then it's like, what am I getting myself into? Like, this isn't what I came here for. And so it's not a good platform in terms of that kind of situation, but also, let's say I were to be successful on Webtoon, there's a chance that the terms of service and the clauses that you agree to could give Webtoon partial ownership and say so in how you distribute your work. And I don't want to be confined to that. So that was the final reason for quitting Webtoons. So currently, right now, I have the story of Envy posted on Webtoons, and I think there's 18 or 19. I can't remember. There's several chapters that start getting well into the story, but on the last one, I left off the little note informing my readers of what's happening and what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to be making it a print version first. I'm going to be making it a normal front to back regular comic, and I'm going to probably, just to have something to show people, I'm going to have my 0.5 comic released, which will be a total of 12 pages, like including the front cover and the back cover and your credits on the front and back. And then from there, I'm just going to try and figure out what my time plate is for releasing a full issue of like 22 pages. And then I will release that 0.5 version in a whole version of a one issue. And I'm using the story I have made on Webtoon currently as the template. So I'm still revisiting the Webtoon, pulling the story that I have there, and I'm going to go ahead and make things better the way that I see them now. In ways that I've learned to project them better, I'm going to try and tie up kind of exaggerated parts of the story kind of a little bit faster, and I'm going to expand a little bit more in certain areas with a little bit more dialogue about kind of world building, what's going on, just a little bit more, a little trickle at a time. And then when I catch up to where I left off on Webtoon, I'm going to completely take it down from Webtoon. And I should have some kind of free PDF version or free clickable version figured out by then for my website. I don't know if I can do it on Shopify's website templates that they have, so I might be looking into a Wix or a Squarespace, but whatever the means of that's going to be, I do want it to be still free and accessible.